It's time for a new conversation about consent. Instead of consent being something that person A secures from person B in order to not get in trouble after the fact, I want to encourage us to start looking at consent through a different lens. In this video today, we're going to talk about why an enthusiastic yes is in fact sexy as hell. I'm Dr. Alexandra Solomon. I'm a couples therapist, a professor, and an author, and I'm passionate about giving people the tools and skills they need to create happy and healthy romantic relationships. When I was in college, the way that we learned about consent was no means no, which means that if the person that you are in a sexual space with says no, then you stop. This is, in fact, bottom of the barrel idea of sex, that if somebody is asking you to stop, that you would stop. That's an of course, but we need to move the ball much, much farther down the field. I'm excited to know that in many places now, the teaching around consent is more about affirmative consent or enthusiastic consent. In fact, at Northwestern University, where I teach and train students, our definition of consent that we use is that consent is knowing, active, voluntary, ongoing, and present. So there, it really is moving into a space that says that this is not, that even begging, coercing, putting people in a situation where saying no would feel awkward or embarrassing. Those are all red flags that the sexual experience is not one that is truly, genuinely mutually wanted and mutually agreed upon. So it's a much richer and more nuanced definition of consent. But here's what I want to say. This isn't hard. It isn't hard for us to learn and enact a kind of consent that is actually our second nature. So as human beings, we're hardwired for empathy. We're hardwired for attunement. Literally, in our bones and in our brains, we have neurons, mirror neurons, that are the basic foundation of empathy. So that my body just knows inherently that there's a look on your face that I can read. There's a way that your body is moving or positioned that I can read and code and know internally that either you're with me, you're excited, you want more, we're together, or that there's hesitation. And so consent really isn't about having to learn something, some set of rules and structures and talking points. It really is about easing into what is most human in us, which is to tune ourselves up to the person that we're with, and to read the feedback. So we naturally know how to put something out there, read the feedback, and then course correct or modify. So that's a really lovely thing, is that we can in fact quiet down our nerves, our anxiety, the messages that we've been given. Oftentimes, if we're talking about a situation where it's somebody who has been acculturated in the masculine with somebody who's been acculturated in the feminine, sometimes what makes it difficult for that person, the masculine presenting person, to tune in is that his brain is full of messages that he needs to be quote unquote successful in having a sexual experience in order to kind of shore up his sense that he's a man, that he's good enough as a man, that he's successful as a man. It's incredibly problematic. On the flip side, when there's somebody who has been acculturated in the feminine, she's been given the message over and over again that she ought not make anybody feel uncomfortable or ill at ease, and that can make it difficult for her to step into voice. So she may be struggling to step into voice, and he may be struggling to tune in, which is why it's so important for each and every one of us to start to question and push back against those incredibly limited, boring, fragmented messages that we've been given about who and how we ought to be in the world. In sex education, oftentimes sex education is really full of fear-based messaging, talking about the dangers, the risks, sometimes the sin or the evil or the danger. And it's certainly important for everybody to have a foundational understanding about risks, about danger, about safety, certainly. But there's an entire piece that I often find with my college students and my graduate students, and oftentimes people who are much, much older, that the piece that's missing is about the really beautiful, wonderful, pleasurable aspects of sex. That sex is a gateway towards connection, towards expression, towards play, towards creativity. And until and unless we're willing to have those kinds of conversations, we're at risk of narrowing it down to this power-based negotiation rather than talking about sex as something that everybody deserves to enter into in a way that both people's pleasure, interest, and readiness is deeply taken into account. Really wonderful sexual experiences are co-created, beginning, middle, and end, so that both people are able to tap into what do I want and what am I ready for, and communicate that to each other and listen to each other. So there you have it, brave love warrior. Consent is best thought of as a sexy feedback loop in which both people are able to feel deeply safe and deeply engaged and present. For more on sex, love, and intimacy, watch the next video.